Well, welcome along to day 2 of Investment Fundamentals Week here on Property Tribes, where my guest for the entire week is Elite Investor Chairman Graham Rowan. And Graham, we're moving on to day 2 of our content, and today we're going to talk about the importance of education. And of course, this is a topic very close to our heart here at Property Tribes, because we believe that you can never learn less. And actually, the way to success is to actually make a lifelong commitment to get educated, and that's something you subscribe to, isn't it?
Oh, totally. I mean, my whole sort of mission has become to try and end financial illiteracy. You know, this is something that I see everywhere, and it's a mission that's taken me to the UN in New York, to Harvard Business School in Boston, the Houses of Parliament, Singapore. I just really want to get on my soapbox and talk about this, because we briefly touched on this in the first day's episode, but you just don't learn this stuff in school or university or the workplace. So once you've made that fundamental decision that you're in charge of your financial future, you've got to start looking for where you can learn a bit more. And it's a double-edged sword, because there's so much out there now with the internet. I mean, when I was growing up, you just had books in the library and whatever. These days you're bombarded with it. So as much as anything, it becomes a process of narrowing down and selecting what you're going to look at. But really, you've got to start, I think, with a fairly broad view of what's going on in the financial market. So I subscribe to a magazine like Money Week, which is a nice succinct way of seeing what's going on. The Financial Times, especially the weekend edition, I think is particularly helpful. So just starting to read those will put you ahead of 90% of the population in terms of having an awareness of the economy, of stocks and shares, of property, of bonds, what's going on in the marketplace. Then you can start selectively reading some books by people who are obviously successful in those fields. And then you can start looking at content. Obviously, Property Tribes is one platform where you can learn a lot. There are similar platforms for stock market type investments. For us, we specialize more in alternative investments, so you can start to learn about those through Elite. But the idea is that you can go to some seminars, read some books, regularly read magazines. The sort of thing I would avoid, frankly, is the kind of 24/7 CNBC kind of TV stuff where there's tickers going across the screen and it's real time, nanosecond. None of that matters. That's just noise and distraction. But if you can just have perhaps a couple of hours a week of just dedicated time, plus occasional seminars that you go to. I mean, I obviously been around this sort of world for quite a while now, but I still probably spend £10,000 a year going to seminars in Britain and America to keep myself sharp, and to see what the latest thinking is. Now, I'm not saying everyone has to start at that sort of level. A lot of these events are much, much cheaper than that. But, go along to a few, see what you learn, see who you meet, because another benefit of this, and, because those of us who are taking a real interest in our financial future, we are weird, I mean, our friends and our family don't understand us. Sometimes your spouse doesn't understand, so it's really nice to go somewhere where you've got like-minded people. One of the best bits of feedback we get is the events we run. I love to meet other investors who think like me, because no one else in my circle does. So you'll find that it all becomes kind of reinforcing, because you're starting to learn a bit more, you're meeting other people who want to learn a bit more, and you kind of help each other along that process. And the main thing I would say is to start, but don't get too many sources of knowledge, or else you'll just feel overloaded and pressured by it. So you only need a handful of things, 2 or 3 books and magazines, a couple of seminars, and a platform like the Property Tribes. That's enough, but just regularly consume it and start growing your knowledge week by week.
Indeed, and I think, when you're choosing a source of advice, I think it's important to understand if there's any kind of agenda behind it. And one of the great things about Property Tribes, it's a hive mind of knowledge. It's not a singular opinion. It is a mass of opinions that people reading can take in and take away from it what they like, mull it over, form their own opinion, and that's a very, very healthy way to learn. But unfortunately, a lot of people tend to get sucked into what I call the wealth creation industry, which is where they're told they can be a millionaire in a year. Well, I can see the look on your face already, and they don't need any money. And, you know, once they get into those kind of marketing funnels, they can actually end up paying thousands and thousands on education and maybe even end up with nothing to show for it. What's your view on those kind of property gurus that say you can be a millionaire in a year?
Oh, it really pains me, to be honest. I mean, one of the places I speak at a couple of times a year is the Property Investor Show. I think it's where we met, actually, and it does pain me there. I see gurus there peddling the same strategies that may have worked 10 years ago, and we know today from all the recent changes that they're not going to work. And there's an awful lot of gullible people go to those events thinking they can get rich quick in real estate, and they sign up for these programs, and some of them are thousands and thousands of pounds.
A deposit on a house, actually.
Indeed. So you're like, oh no, please. So yeah, be very, very careful. You have to have a bit of discipline about what you're doing. You have to, just by all means gather information, but don't be too quick with your credit card or your checkbook. I mean, I had a member in here the other day who's in this kind of education phase. He went along to his first property auction the other day as part of that, and he bought a property. And I said, I really wouldn't have done that. You were there to learn, and you couldn't resist. You got emotional, and you bid on something, and now you own this property that's 300 miles from where you live. What exactly are you going to do with that? So you've got to be careful not to get sucked in. But the idea that you can get rich in real estate or anything else. I see the same in cryptos. I see the same in financial trading of the stock markets. I mean, I'll remind people of the 90-90-90 rule on financial trading, which is that 90% of people lose 90% of their money in the first 90 days when they get involved in this sort of day trading and so on. So be careful. This is the education phase. You shouldn't be spending too much money at this point. Maybe you're buying some books, you're subscribing to some papers or magazines, and you're going to the odd seminar. That doesn't mean you're signing up for the top-end mastermind program, whiz bang, whatever. And remember that a lot of people go for the things where they think they'll get rich quick. Back where I come from in Geordie land, we have an expression which is fur coat and no knickers. Which really means you're going for that sort of top-end, showy, high-risky stuff, but you haven't got any of the fundamentals underneath. You haven't laid the foundations. This week's all about foundations, and that stuff ain't foundation laying. So don't come at this with a get-rich-quick attitude. In fact, I often say, I reverse it and say, look, get rich slow. That's the way that will last.
No, I agree 100%, and I do get very concerned when I hear these property gurus recommending that people go straight into HMOs, for instance. And I've been to those kind of seminars and was very concerned that they never once mentioned the word tenant. And that's the person that's going to be paying your rent and servicing your mortgage, and they don't even mention them. So, I totally subscribe to what you say. And you've mentioned quite a few sources that are free, like Property Tribes, or a few pounds a week for a magazine or a subscription, and maybe a couple of £100 for a good day out at a seminar. Or indeed, the landlord and investment shows are free to attend, as is the Property Investor Show. So there's lots of good sources of information out there. But then do you also, we need to talk about paid advice as well, because paid advice is insured advice. Is this at the stage that you start thinking about working with a broker, finding your tax advisor, and starting to build those relationships?
Well, the thing I think that really should start you off, depending on where you are on the journey, I appreciate we've got people at every different level that will be watching us, but in the very early stages, I always encourage people to open a bank account that's separate to their main bank account, often with a different bank, and call it Your Name Wealth Account, so the John Smith Wealth Account. And then get into the habit, every time you get paid, whether that's a salary or dividends from your company or whatever, go and put a percentage of that money into your wealth account. Once you get into that, and I say don't do this online, have it as a physical branch in the high street, so you've got to walk there, and the only reason you're going there is to make a deposit in your wealth account. You're not doing this for convenience, you're doing this for the psychology of it, the habit forming side of it. So then you've got money that's accumulating first, that gets you into the habit of saving, and and frankly, I don't care what you earn. If you can't save on 20,000 a year, you won't save on 200,000 a year. It's a mental discipline. Yeah. And all the wealthy people I know were saving money when they were on 20,000 a year. You know, so you've got to get into that discipline first. So once you start accumulating the wealth, that sort of takes the pressure off your urge to sort of do something quickly, because you know that's going on in the background. So that just keep the saving going whilst you're educating yourself. When you come into the point where you're talking about paid advice, I think certainly it's worth looking at perhaps getting referrals or recommendations to people from people that you know have been successful with them. And obviously there are good and bad mortgage brokers, good and bad tax advisors. So the more you can find the right people who've already achieved success and see who their advisors are, that's a great way into that. And also you need to really start to get some clarity on your strategy. And I mean, this may be heresy on a property platform, but there are other investments out there apart from property that people should educate themselves on as well. And the whole point about this, it's a bit like, whenever I meet somebody who's got all their money in buy-to-let or all their money in the stock market, I say, well, basically you're riding a unicycle. You are kind of wobbling around on a single wheel here, and all your wealth depends on that one asset class. If you start investing across multiple asset classes, you've got a bike, a quad, a trike, a quad bike, or multiple legs on your table. So you need to learn about the whole market. And real good long-term investment strategies are well diversified. So there'll be property in there, but there'll also be stocks and shares. There'll be precious metals. There might be commodities. There'll be currencies and all the rest of it. So we'll go through this later. But you've got to have a breadth of investments, and then start looking at where you might source them from, including advisors, including sourcing deals, and all the rest of it. So you're building your network at the same time as you're building your knowledge in your education.
Well, fantastic. So that is part 2 of our Investment Fundamentals Week, and we've been talking about the importance of education. And Graham, I think this week's just going to get better and better as we go on. I'm so I really just find the way you explain everything, it makes it really, really easy to understand, and it's very engaging. So thank you very much for that. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at your income engine and why you need to turbocharge it. So we've got another exciting day tomorrow, haven't we?
Indeed, looking forward to it.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, I invite you to click the subscribe button. And if you want to join our conversation, where Graham will also be interacting with Property Tribes members, please do click across to propertytribes.com. That is where the conversation is hosted. And if you pop over there, you'll see that we've got over 45,000 members who contribute to our discussions. And you can tap in to all their knowledge, experience, contacts, and as we like to say at Property Tribes, none of us is as smart as all of us. So stay tuned, and we'll be back tomorrow.